It's day 19, and we are here today with Sherry Steelman, who is a teacher, and you will not believe it when I say it, in her 50th year of teaching. And this is your final year at Northview, right?
At Northview Public Schools, Northview High School, where I have stayed all 50 years.
We are not worthy. We are not worthy, Sherry.
Seriously, your passion and your engagement with your work, because I was working in Northview, I want to say about 5 years ago, that I really got to know you and got to come and watch you confer with kids, and it has never flagged. This year you did Shakespeare book clubs with digital compositions, and can I add,
brand new.
Sherry also has a PhD in Shakespeare, so you're just like your passion for learning, your engagement with teaching. Can you just talk about how did you do that for 50 years?
Well, in my PhD, it was not something that I've had for a long time. I think I've had it maybe for 6 years. I mean, it took me almost 20 years to get it, because it was one class at a time, because I didn't want to give up my job. And I did have a few maternity leaves here and there. I have 6 kids, so
I'm just wondering what percentage of teachers in the United States got their PhD after their 44th year of teaching.
I have no idea, but
Wow.
Seriously, did you catch that she has 6 children as well?
Yeah, I was definitely in my 60s, but I think it's all about learning. And I just, I didn't start off thinking I was going to do this, but as the years went by, every year just was so different. And for me, it's all about learning something. And of course, literature is my passion. And Shakespeare actually didn't become my passion until I was into teaching for a while. But I learned from the kids too. And I think that's what keeps me fresh, is the students in my classroom. And so I never approached a year where I felt like I don't want to go back, because it was always that exciting new beginning. You know how it is that first day when anything is possible.
For sure. Yeah.
Right? And then after a few days, it's like, did I ever leave last year? I'm not sure that I did. But so, it's realistic too, but I really do think it's, and I'm in a good school district as well, but the kids are the ones that keep me coming back. So they're
like a true teacher, right?
Right. I mean, it's kind of like a book where the never ending book or something, where each chapter is something else is new. But I mean, things go up and things go down, and you see things come around again. And I thought maybe with COVID, I would have met my match. And I did. It was definitely vertical learning for me. But every time I learned something new, I thought, oh, okay, I got that. What's next? And so, I learned how to teach online, which I feel like, wow, that was a really cool thing to learn. And I started using YouTube and all these Loom videos, and pretty soon we had our courses lined up pretty well. So then I would do a video for each day, so that students would see me teaching if they had to do anything at home. So yeah, I just kept learning. And then, yeah, the other thing happened too, and just talking a little bit about Shakespeare, is that during 2020, during that summer, with all the race riots and everything that was going on, I was really thinking to myself, how, with all of this, how am I going to make Shakespeare relevant? What am I going to do? Because I had been teaching Macbeth forever. And of course we did Romeo and Juliet in 9th grade. And certainly there are all these wonderful themes in his works, but I just felt like something has to change. Or maybe it was me. Maybe I was the one that had to change. But I got this, this train that I was on with choice reading, and where students were having more and more choice. And yet in that area in Shakespeare, they didn't really. So I started exploring this idea of his problem plays. And it's these plays where there's no definite ending. You feel as if there are more problems coming, and it's not satisfying. And so there's always a moral corrupter. There's a main character who's at odds with society. And so I started exploring those. And then I found some on PBS, I found some documentaries and started exploring a little bit more. And then I thought, what if I did Shakespeare book clubs? And I talked to a few teachers and they were like, are you crazy? I can't even teach one play. And you want to teach 4 in the same classroom? I thought, yeah, but what if we did it differently? What if we didn't read every word? What if we treated it almost as a literacy kind of thing with pre-reading, reading, and post-reading so that we could bring everybody along? What if before we even read the plays, students would find out as much as possible about the plays? What if students could choose their own play? Let them have at it. Let them choose their own book clubs. Let's try something totally different. And of course, when I read your most recent book, and it's, it kind of confirmed my thinking that book clubs evolve. Kids get better. Well, adults get better at being in a book club. So I had already started this book club idea with drama. I called them drama book clubs because kids could read the plays aloud and they could talk about them. And so I thought, okay, we did that and students got interested in that and they were able to handle that. So let's try this other thing instead. And I found 4 plays that I thought, okay, these have possibilities. Of course, Othello with the race idea. And then I started, when I looked at the 4 plays, I thought, what do they all have in common? So we looked at Othello, we looked at Measure for Measure, Winter's Tale, Merchant of Venice. So there were issues with gender, there were issues with race, there were issues with domestic abuse, there were issues with alienation, money. And then I used Taming of the Shrew as a mentor text. So that was another problem play. So I started looking at, okay, what do they have in common? So there's usually some kind of a block to love. There's usually somebody keeping someone from loving who they want to or being with someone that they want to. There's usually a moral corrupter. There's somebody who's gonna really make the main character falter and try to and make a decision, like, which way am I gonna go? Measure for Measure, there's Duke and he decides to take a break because his city is falling apart and it's all his own fault. So he gets his friend Angelo to take over for him, but instead of leaving, he goes in disguise and Angelo starts laying down the law. And one of the laws is if you get someone pregnant and you're not married, you are put to death. And it's an old law and he's gonna uphold it. So he decides, someone comes in and it's this young couple and they're engaged to be married, but she's obviously very pregnant. And so he says, all right, you go home and have the baby, to her, and to him off to prison, and we'll set the date for execution. Well, he's panicking. So he tells his friend, go to my sister. She's studying to be a nun. Get her to plead my case. So she does. And she's eloquent and beautiful and just knows exactly what to say to this Angelo. And he says, no. And then finally, just as she's leaving, he says, there might be one way. And she doesn't get it at first, but it's basically, if you sleep with me, I'll let him go. And she is just infuriated. She goes to her brother and she says, this happened. And he says, that's horrible. Like, this would never, I'd rather die. And then he pauses and he says, well, it's only one night. and then that's where I end my book talk. because then the kids, everybody, each play I'd book talk and I get them right to that point.
I can so see you doing it.
And then
God.
okay, and then I just walk away. All right, you can go up to the computer and sign up for whatever book you want to read. It doesn't matter how many book clubs. It doesn't. I'd like to see all the books represented so that we can talk about all the books and be able to compare. All right, who was the moral corrupter in yours, or who was the one in disguise? There's usually someone with guile or disguise. There's usually some kind of a structural device like a double plot or something like that going on. And then there's this ambiguous ending. And so then they can talk about it even though they haven't read the play.
So Sherry, did you find, I was there and I got to see a digital composition that one of the groups had done. Did you find that kids were more engaged with Shakespeare book clubs than they were with the core text study of a Shakespeare play?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And the thing that struck me, I never expected it in a million years, because I asked them, like, what was the thing you liked about it? Because my only goal was, the only question I wanted them to answer was, is Shakespeare still relevant today?
Yeah.
That was it. That was it. And they could do a remix, which is a multimedia presentation where they would take things from the play and things from social media, just anything to show what's going on. They didn't have trouble doing it, but they said what we really liked was hands off from the teacher. We could sit in our groups and read the play together, and if we screwed up the language or we didn't know what was going on, we could ask each other. And we didn't have someone on our necks, or not that I would do that, but still, sometimes it can be embarrassing if you don't quite know what's going on, or you don't know the language. And they were able to figure it out themselves. And so it was great. It was
for many years since Penny has met you, Penny and I've been working together and presenting together all over the place. And she keeps referring to you and your classroom. So I'm glad, I know we met briefly before, but to have you on today is really a treat. And the thing that really intrigued me was this idea that you have taught AP for a very long time. And a lot of times, Penny and I hear from AP teachers, well, we can't do what you're advocating because it will not properly prepare kids for the AP exam. And yet Penny always says, well, you don't know this teacher that I know who has phenomenal AP scores, but doesn't teach the class in what would be considered a traditional way. Could you talk about your approach to teaching AP a little bit?
Well, when I started teaching AP, I taught very similarly to everyone else, which was book, play, book, so it was really book driven. And I thought I was doing everything just right, but I was also noticing that students weren't reading. And I know even today, so many lit teachers, how do you solve that problem? Do you give quizzes? Well, then do you give daily quizzes for every little reading assignment? And when I started off, I think I was teaching 12 different novels. But I did this one unit at the end, which was a choice reading unit. And it was basically find a book where bravery is involved. Well, that's any book, right? So they had so much fun finding these books and reading, and they were all reading, they were all engaged. And then I just started changing it up a little bit so that each year I dropped a book, and then I started adding more, and then and of course, with reading Read Aside and Book Love and all those books. And so I had an idea of how to do it. I started introducing more choice. And the idea was, if they could choose and we could confer, they could still read all kinds of books, because the only test on the whole AP exam where they have to talk about a book is the open question. And I don't know, someone figured it out as like 1/9 of the whole thing or whatever. So most of the test is really about excerpts and poetry. So excerpts from novels or from plays, but they could, even if they read one book, I mean, the questions are very broad now. So, you know, write about a character who has an unusual gift, or write about a character who experiences a unique home, or something. One that they just did 2 days ago was just a practice test on, they gave a quote. They said, when you're young, you think money is everything. And when you're older, you know it's true. So choose a book in which a character shares that view. And so they were just racking their brains trying. Of course, I was thinking, Merchant of Venice, don't you remember that? But they really didn't have trouble with it. But I think even with the new system, because the College Board did these binders and they're beautiful, because they knew that probably half of the AP Lit teachers were going to be retiring in the next 5 years, and all these new teachers were coming on board. So they wanted to have a curriculum in place, but there's nothing in there that says you have to cover so many books. And so basically all it is it's exactly what you did in your book with the loops.
Yep.
Right? 180 days. Well, that's what it is. So you're going through short fiction, poetry, long fiction 3 times.
Yeah.
And it's a great system. I changed my whole curriculum around so that it followed those loops, but I didn't change a thing. I had them all doing choice reading. And the one book that we read together was 1,000 Splendid Suns. And that was one that they actually read in the summer, so they'd be ready to go. And they love the book. It's totally accessible on their own. And there was so much discussion, and we would go back to that book over and over. But we could talk about finding an unreliable narrator, for example, which is something that they need to do just by looking at an excerpt from that book, or from any book for that matter. So we could look at devices by looking at excerpts in their choice reading books. So we did that. And then I did Macbeth. So I had 2 books, and now I've dropped that. So now I have just 1,000 Splendid Suns as our only whole class novel. And then we do drama book clubs. So we'll spend a couple weeks on that. And then we do the Shakespeare book club. So I have probably, I don't know, 25 to 30 plays where, and some of them are higher literary merit and some of them are not. But I do book talks. It takes me a whole hour just to book talk, you know, in some way, shape or form, all these plays. And again, I have 4 to 6 copies of each, and they choose their groups, they choose their play, and they have 2 days to.
It's amazing when I hear you, Sherry, because I looked up while you were talking, a teacher that I worked with in Bangkok who wrote a piece for English Journal, and I looked it up. It's March of 2014. Read books every day, mostly for pleasure. Teaching the IB program through choice reading. And like you said, excerpts and the study of devices and things. But, you know, he's working with a lot of multi-language learners. And he said he was certain they weren't reading the whole books because they were just laborious for them. But they could learn through some of what we called mini lessons with excerpts of texts, right? But they had this wide range of choices, many of which are on the AP list of, you know, there's a long 100-some book list that you could. And I just think that it's so interesting that here was this very popular article in 2014. I always wanted Tim to write his book. And then here you are doing completely innovative work in AP. And yet I would suggest that in the 90 percentile somewhere, the number of people I see teaching AP who say, I have to teach it like this if they're going to pass the test. It's just an echo to me of how trapped we can be by this standardized testing culture.
And the other thing too is there are many veteran AP teachers who get really good scores.
Mhm.
And so for them to change what they're doing,
Yep.
you know, they might look at it and think, well, why? Why should I
Right.
change when I'm
And
already
Wait,
doing
wait, wait.
And
How do
part
you
of that
answer?
answer, part of that answer is in the reason why I wrote Read Aside, because my daughters were in AP Lit and they got good grades, and that teacher was an exemplary teacher in getting kids to pass that test. But at what price, right? At what price? That the narrowness of that approach turned off both my girls, one temporarily, one even longer term than that, to the idea of pleasure reading. And what I'm hearing, Sherry, is it's not an either or in your classroom. Kids can be engaged with reading without the sacrifice of the scores.
Right. And the other thing is, I don't know how many in your daughter's class took the exam. Do you have any idea?
I don't remember. No.
Well, in our building, I mean, our principal is really not about the test. He wants them to take it. I mean, that'd be great because he thinks it's a rigorous test. That's good practice and shows students what they can do. But it doesn't matter to him what our scores are. And we are finding that students, the number of students taking the lit test is going down, down, down. Because students, for example, they might have AP Lang first. And if they get that credit, they can't have both Lang and lit. So then they don't take the lit test because they've already gotten credit for the other one. And it's just, you know, money spent that they can't use the credit. So that's the other thing. If students are taking the class, but are not taking the actual test. So let's say 60% of them are not taking the test. Then you have to ask yourself as an instructor, what is my goal? What is it I'm after here? Is it to pass the test that they're not even taking? Or to me, it's that lifelong learning, that lifelong joy of just reading, to of course, we know that it builds empathy and it calms the spirit, and you know, so many things that it does just helps you become a better thinker and writer and everything else, and gives you so many things to talk about. But
which applies to the kids who are taking the test as well, right?
You know, yeah, I would be remiss if I didn't say something about you're an amazing library, because I was just in that classroom last month and sitting in a seat by that library. And I watched you with a young girl who had finished a book and she wanted a new book. And that's the power of a teacher who knows their library and knows the goals. And you took her over to the library because she wanted like another in a series that sounded kind of pop fiction-y to me. And you said, well, here's this and here's this. And then, I don't know, have you considered the original Peter Pan? You know, you might have seen Disney, or you might have, and you handed it to her and she went back to her desk. And during the reading period time, which was about 10 minutes, she was looking at the three of them. And she came and put the other two back and kept Peter Pan. And I said to you, she kept Peter Pan, she kept a classic. And you were like, yeah. But just the idea that you knew the girl, you know your books. I mean, if we look behind you, that is an invitational space. I want to go dig in those books. And you make reading really not just accessible, but kind of irresistible.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that girl, because she just came to me today and she said, I don't know if I can finish Peter Pan. So can we go back to Mitch Albom? I said, sure.
Oh.
So she wanted something, not exactly spiritual, but just something that she had read, The Man in the Lifeboat. I think that was his newest one. And so then she actually settled on The 5 People You Meet in Heaven. So that's what she went with today. So she put it back, but she gave it a chance.
Yeah.
She gave it some time, and maybe
readers have the right to say, not for me, this is too much, or I don't, not, you know, it's April.
Right.
I don't know. I think you're so inspiring to listen to. I know that had my daughter had you for AP, she would have decided to be an English major, which was her goal since she was a 10-year-old. She was going to write books and be an English major. And AP Lit, she came home and said, I am done. I would never want to be an English major because that's what they do. They read these books and this. And I was like, no, what about your mom? Your mom does not matter, right? Not matter.
Yeah.
She's an elementary teacher now, thank goodness. But she has a library very much like yours. And I think that the possibilities out there at any grade level for teachers to prioritize the kids, which is what you're telling us, prioritize what the end result is. I want kids who like to read, right? I saw it in your ninth grade. Go ahead.
Yeah. They find books too, that for me, even because I had just discovered Matt Haig this year. He wrote the Midnight Library, and then The Humans, which is like, every year I feel like there's a hot book and everybody wants to read it. And it's this one. And then I had a girl send me a picture from a bookstore, and it was his other book, How to Stop Time. And so I bought a couple copies. And so they give me ideas, lots of ideas about books that I don't know about. So, but yeah, have you two read this one?
No, we read the Midnight Library in a book club we're in. So we're going to have to read that.
Yeah. So this is one of my favorites.
Wow.
He gives advice at the end of the book on what humans should do as a race. And there's 97 suggestions. So I particularly liked the one with never discount the value of white wine with a peanut butter sandwich. Anyway, so
I just want to say that your passion emanates from the screen, and your students are extraordinarily fortunate. And anybody watching this, if you go back and watch the first 5 minutes of this, when you were talking about how to envision teaching Shakespeare, I think you said out loud, what if? I think you said that 5 or 6 times. I mean, that is the core of a great teacher. What if I did this? What if, and that's how you stay fresh. And so I just want to thank you so much for coming on, and what a pleasure it was to hear you today.
What a thrill for me. I mean, really.
Oh my goodness, Sherry, you're just so inspiring. Last question. What's next? What are you going to do in the fall when you don't have a classroom?
I know, because part of me, I am not retiring because I feel like I can't handle it, or because I don't like it anymore. But it's those 2 words, it's time, that kind of thing. And yet I don't really I'm too busy to plan anything for the next year. I still have my book that I'm it's the manuscript final revision is due this weekend. So.
Oh, good.
I got to get
That's
going.
awesome. Well, and I'm hoping I can still
know.
send teachers your way that need help planning a reimagining of AP, which I've sent you several over the years.
Yes.
So that your work will continue to grow and generate.
In fact, one of them tried Shakespeare book clubs with me. She did it totally virtually.
Awesome.
So we tried it out together. So yeah.
There's a secret. Sherry, you are a delight. Thank you so much.
Thank you for asking me. It's been wonderful. Thank you.
All right, everybody. We will see you next time. Have a good one.
Thank you.